Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Sorry about running a little bit late there. Had to finish some work for the week. Hope everyone's kind of weekend plans are in place and their FPL plans are in place too. Interesting to actually see what happened. I think a lot of people are free hitting, but that just might be because they're sharing their free hits. What kind of percentage of you guys are actually going to be free hitting this week? I just want to know with an opening poll. So afternoon, everyone. Or wherever you are around the world. Hey Rohit, hey Malcolm, hey Finn, Eric, why you go? Hey, so Bruno, Foden, or Sancho, Sterling. I still really like Bruno for my drafts, to be quite honest, but I am quite tempted by the Elango option this week if you are free hitting. But he might just serve a place in your team as that sort of first option on the bench. Will Wood says, not me, feels pointless with two City in place. Yeah, I kind of get what you mean, Will. And I'm in a certain position where I have Cancelo and Laporte still, so no real need in a sense to free hit. Obviously, I was going for a free hit. He's going to ask you something on Twitter. Yep, absolutely. We can have a look at that in a second. Mystic Monkey says, Sterling, Mahrez, or me captain. I mean, I'd probably actually go for me. But is there any reason why you don't have Weghorst in your team? Mahrez, Foden, or Sterling. I really like Mahrez for this week just because he was that kind of odd man out in terms of him being the lone substitute from the attacking point of view for City in the previous game versus Spurs. Keep in mind, though, with Pep Roulette that Grealish and I think Gabriel Jesus are actually ready to play. So that's going to be quite damaging, I would say, for going for players who at least played the full 90 minutes at Spurs. That's kind of why I like Mahrez as an option. If there's going to be rotation, he should still be someone who benefits from that. I'd probably go with KDB Omar in that situation because I do think he's one of those players where he isn't so prone to the rotation from City. So actually, quite fair down the line. I think half of the players are free hitting. That's gonna be quite tough because I mean, in a week where around 46% of managed free hitting, I as someone who's not free hitting and also taking mine and saying I imagine I'm probably gonna have a pretty tough time. I'll be checking Twitter messages very shortly, Malcolm. Yeah. Did I free hit? No, I'm planning to save my free hit for the latter part of the season. Better captain, Weghorst or Son? I was asking that question myself on Twitter. Most people have answered with Weghorst. In my own sort of cheat sheet video, I had kind of I've gone with Weghorst personally just because I like him in the specific matchups from a set piece point of view, and then just a little bit more guarantees with the doubles. Also, kind of thinking back about the Leeds and Spurs game earlier in the season, Kulusevski wasn't there, so that's a little bit of an X factor that Spurs have. But I wasn't too interested in what Spurs provided from the attacking point of view. Um, have a lot of Liverpool and Arsenal. How do I go about it? I mean, it's probably a free hit and recovers. To be quite honest. James Ward-Prowse or Broya. So I think my answer would actually depend on whether or not you are. Actually, I guess it doesn't. I would probably say James Ward-Prowse might be a slightly better option if you're free hitting. I would be a little bit more tempted towards going for Broya if I wasn't free hitting, just because I think he's a little bit easier to fit into the team structure, and it doesn't really mean. Right now, I couldn't name too many players who actually have three perfect forwards, right? You have players like Lacazette who could be moved on, and you have players elsewhere in teams like Eduard or even Antonio who just haven't been servicing really well. So I like Broya as that more long-term option that you can keep for the rest of the season. James Ward-Prowse, however, could still be a very good short-term option. Going for KDB, Mahrez, and Cancelo, yeah, I think those are quite safe options. Ditch the triple attack plan due to Pep Roulette headache. And also, when you're watching Cancelo in the previous match for Spurs, I thought he looked exceptional from the attacking side of things. Probably the Man City player who actually cracked the most amount of shots versus that Spurs defense. JB's using his free hit this week. Would you consider Adams or Broya? Maybe both as a punt. Um, I'd probably say. I mean, I guess what I would ask first is what do you sacrifice by going for Adams over Broya? Because clearly there's a budget difference there, and I'm just wondering what you've sacrificed in order to go for Adams. Nothing really wrong with Adams as a pick. I think his underlying stats in the last few weeks have been very good, and they have been on an uptrend compared to someone like Broya, who's been rather consistent for the most part of the season. But as I say, Broja is interesting just because he's cheaper and he therefore gives you a bit more flexibility on the free hit to maybe go for options such as KDB and the like. Would you bench Edouard or Ait Nouri? I'd probably bench Edouard because Ait Nouri at least will probably play 90 minutes, so you've got some guarantees there. Edouard could once again give another 1 minute. How sure am I that KDB plays? I'd probably say 75%, 80%. I have no connections to Pep myself, so yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. KDB is just one of those players where when you look at his minutes, as soon as as long as he's fit, he will play most of the games for the City teams, and that's been the case for the most part. Whereas other options such as Sterling and Mahrez have been more prone to rotation in the past, just as a historical trend. So I feel like you get a bit more guarantee from KDB. James says, "Hey, what defender to bring in for Tomiyasu? Looking at Livramento, Dean, or me? I'd probably just go for me. Go for a short-term option, and use that defender maybe even as a placeholder for weeks to come. I don't really like the game that Aston Villa have. Whereas by contrast, I think me has two pretty good games for Burnley. Who did I transfer out? I transferred out Jota, who's injured. I also transferred out Edouard, who is basically a 0 points magnet, or rather 2 points in a double game week. So, and then also Antonio for Weghorst. The reason why I had to do a triple transfer is simply because of budgeting reasons. So, yes, I have 1.3 million in the bank, but I couldn't do that without dropping Antonio into Weghorst, and also when I was just looking at it, I have to make the transfer towards someone like a Broja next week, anyways, and I really preferred Broja in this game week, even with a -4 compared to Edouard, who has a potential of really getting 1 point maximum. And since I don't have a bench this week, I think it just makes a lot of sense because I don't have any coverage for Edouard. You wanted to go for ASM? Yeah, I wanted to go for ASM as well, but he's been injured. Is it guaranteed that Sterling will play 100%? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think KDB is more guaranteed, and I think Mahrez is potentially more guaranteed than Sterling. If anything, I would be seeing Grealish and Jesus as options to actually play maybe ahead of Foden and Sterling, potentially. ASM is injured. Yep, exactly. CM Punk, completely agree there. Let's just go to Twitter for a quick second and see if I can actually respond to some people's requests. I'll start from the top. So, Anissa saying, should I go for a free hit or is this team okay? Will it be worth bringing a Southampton or Burnley defender for -4? Honestly, I think this team is perfectly fine. In fact, you're in a much better position than me, someone who, had to kind of get towards 11 players. You being on 11 tells me that you're probably going to be fine for a free hit. Because you should look at it, I think, for people who are not free hitting this week, you should look at this week as a red arrow. And I think the reason why that should make you confident is because you're potentially saving this free hit and being able to capitalize on even better doubles in the future. If you saw how well some of the free hitters did in the week that everyone kind of went either for a triple captain or Salah, someone like I think FPL Lone Wolf showed or debuted a very, very strong free hit, and we can use that free hit for towards the end of the season. So I think you being in such a good position clearly tells me that you don't need free hit. Travis, your current team, but you're thinking about using your last free hit. Yeah, that's interesting. Because when I look at your team, I'd say I don't really want to replace any of these Arsenal Liverpool players. And especially since King is injured, I probably would free hit. I think that's a good kind of spot for you to free hit. It also gives you a great chance to probably have a better keeper this week. So all in all, I would probably consider a free hit. And when you return, I suppose all you really have to do is transfer out someone like Reguilon because Mopé will have a double soon. And the rest of your team actually looks quite good. But let's see what your original plans were. So it was King to Weghorst, Tierney to Connor, Robert / Bednarek. Yeah, the -8. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking at when I'm looking at your team is a little worrisome. Where because for you, someone like Tierney still has a double versus Liverpool. I don't expect much in that double, to be quite honest. So maybe you can move away from Tierney. That's your kind of prerogative. But I think when I'm looking at the defenders, I just feel like Reguilon is a bit of a problem point in the future. So that kind of has me worried with transferring someone like Tierney, who's been quite a consistent lock. And I'd maybe prefer free hitting. I mean, it really depends on whether you think you can have a better haul later in the season. Just because, yeah, the way I see your team, that's interesting. Jimenez, yeah, I mean, it's set up so well for the next 2 weeks, and even maybe game week 30 that I'd probably avoid the free hit. I think it's just down to what you like. I've gone aggressively for a -8, but I think the rest of my team looks quite strong. Whereas I think there might be one or two weak points with Reguilon there. So it's a tricky situation. And then also the lack of Cancelo too. Uh, it's a tough option actually. I think it's 50-50. I like both your options, and I think your transfers are good. I'd definitely prioritize the double Burnley if you were actually going for that, and then topping that off with the Southampton player who can give you a double too. So that's up to you. Hey Fran, I have two free hits. TC, would I free hit this team? Yeah, I'd free hit this team. I think if you're in a position and in such an elite position such as this, I would definitely go for a free hit. Because I'm not sure I really like the matchup of Wolves this week with Kilman and Jimenez. And you kind of have a huge upside for 4 players is what I'm looking at here. And that's in reality a -16. So yeah, I hear your points about the Arsenal defense long term, but their games are really good in the near future. So I wouldn't mind, sorry, playing double Arsenal in the near future and then kind of dropping them off after the double versus Liverpool. That's kind of my point of view there. I'd probably free hit. Alternatively, so then Antonio to Weghorst, would you make any further moves? Don't like putting rotation, chance, or form, or Bowen's form. Would you get rid of either? Tempted by James Ward-Prowse for -4 for Foden. Next week I'm thinking Sa, Rafinha, and Jimenez for -8. Leaves 28 team looking like this. Yeah, I hear you there with the doubles. Yeah, I think Foden does have a chance of being rotated, so I do back you on the James Ward-Prowse -4. I probably wouldn't go for Son necessarily this week for the -8. Just because if you've already got Weghorst in your team, you have that kind of captaincy locked down, and it's not kind of preempted by anything else since you already have James Ward-Prowse in your team. So I think yeah, you choose either option. Planning to bring in Son and Broja for Bowen and Dennis -4 and play with 10 players. Son as captain or maybe Weghorst. Should I be using my free hit? Got 2 free hits left and the wild card, top 8k in the world right now. Awesome job, by the way, with the rank. Hope you're doing well too. Planning to bring in Son and Broja. Yep. I'd be more tempted to drop Watkins, and that's kind of my opinion there. Yeah. I know Watkins has the double, but I feel like is there really a point of owning Watkins and kind of holding money in Watkins when Dennis also has a double in the future, and he's actually been playing at least 90 minutes a game, and we've seen Watkins being benched. But otherwise, I can kind of understand like why you'd want to do that. Maybe it's just for budget reasons, but I think having a little bit of flexibility so you can maybe move someone like a Smith Rowe around might be interesting for you, or even the ability to move a little bit away from Foden or some of the defenders that you have, because I can see that's a very, very strong defense in terms of money and how much money is held in there. So I'd be more tempted to move away from Watkins, but I think the transfers make sense. I'm just going to quickly go back to YouTube and end the poll. So who do you think is the best defender from Wolves to take? I do think the highest upside comes from Ait-Nouri or Semedo, just because it's a weird one actually. So Semedo kind of has this problem where he is prone to rotation, and I would say Semedo was quite lucky to actually get the points that he did in the previous week. However, he is quite good at getting bonus points similarly to Ait-Nouri, but Ait-Nouri has the issue of dealing with Marcel. I think Cody is someone who is the safest option, but I think the upside probably comes from Semedo and Ait-Nouri. Do I think Ait-Nouri starts? I do think he does. I think the manager has actually quite a bit of faith in Ait-Nouri. Who am I captaining next game week? I haven't really decided, to be quite honest. It could be that I bring in a transfer to actually go for a captaincy, but it'll probably be set on maybe a Southampton player. Is Sancho worth a punt? I think on a free hit, yes, but as an option to transfer in if you're not free hitting, then probably not. Is Tierney injured? You're close to taking him out of your team. I don't think he's injured, unless you've heard something else. Dubravka, Cancelo, Walker, Peters, Romero, Cash, Rafinha, Bowen, Kane, Broya, Dennis, transfer already done. Need to free hit. I don't think you necessarily need to free hit there. You've already got Kyle Walker, Peters, who's in a great week. Cancelo has a great game. Rafinha, Bowen, still great options. Kane, Broya, great options again. And then I think the other options aren't super exciting, but I think can still do well. So nothing wrong with that. Kyle Walker, Peters / Benrek or Shaw. I'd probably go for Benrek. Foster plus Tarkowski plus Elanga or Pope plus Benrek plus Allen. Interesting question there, actually. So I'm not a big fan of the Foster matchup, but I do like Elanga regardless. I'd probably go for the Pope variation. Because I'm not exactly sure what stopped Tarkowski from playing, and I don't really know what the situations would arise to for that to happen. So I prefer the latter option. I'm going to quickly speed through a bit of Twitter and go back in time a little. So Ryan Marsh says, hey mate, would you start Broya or Elanga? I'd probably go for Broya. Maka, I mentioned starting Seiss over Cucurella and Bowen over Watkins. Yep, definitely I would do that. Thank you very much as well. Harold, so hello Fran, I have one free transfer, 2.2 in the bank, or you could free hit. So King is going to be a problem point. The rest of the team looks fine, arguably. I'd probably go for Edouard and Broya -4 and probably call it a day there. Hope that Foden comes off the bench and delivers something. I just think, yeah, with the free hit, you can probably get something better later in the season, and those are my opinions on not free hitting this week when you don't have too many problems in your starting 11. So this is your team, beautiful front line. This is a free hit, isn't it? Yep. Yeah, no complaints. I think this is lovely. Bowen just looks like the form man every game. Yeah, I mean, Bowen's great. So Bowen was actually one of my hidden gems at the start of the season where I thought he would do extremely well. Just because I had watched him 2 years ago when he was playing in his first season West Ham when he came as a winter transfer. And he looked really, really good when he was playing in Old Trafford. So I do really love Bowen. I think he's still a keeper in the team. It's a weird one. It's a weird one just because they don't have doubles. But I think, unless you can jam a full set of 12 players who have doubles each week, then Bowen is someone you probably keep. You will make some adjustments. Yep, fine with me. Please let me know if you do. What do? You only have 0.1 mil. You've got no clue. So I think I don't actually know how much King is. So maybe he's not affordable, is he? Yeah, I guess Weghorst is a bit of a stretch on that sort of budget. That's a tough one. What would you guys do here? Would you maybe drop someone like Odegaard? I mean, you could also drop someone like White, but then the problem is who for? You could go for like a Southampton defender, but I'm not sure if I'd really like to switch into that. Potentially going to a cheap Burnley defender, but that's still expensive and more expensive than White, or the same price. It doesn't actually let you get out of King, so a bit of a tight spot here. I think De Bruyne is sort of capping this team in terms of budget. Maybe you actually leave King on, and then I think a Burnley defender makes the most sense. Jordan, would you go McNeil over Ward-Prowse? Nope. All right, let's just go back to the top then now, since some people have responded. What do you think of this team as of now? I'm playing this team with free at 2.0 activated, 0.1 in the bank. Still have wildcard to play. Very nice. I think wildcard just after this game week is really good. Wildcard game week 28 is definitely a great option. You don't think Burn will come out with a clean sheet for Celeste, so Barnes is a diff. Interesting. Also, Adams over Broya because I think it's more secure for a points haul and a higher ceiling if Sutton have a good game. Yeah, so I mean, I guess Walker. See, what scares me is that I think Walker and Shaw are a little worrisome in terms of ceiling. But then again, yeah, I might prefer. I'd probably prefer a Burnley defender, even if you don't believe there's going to be a clean sheet in the Leicester game. Just because I think from watching United recently, I would still say the fullbacks don't look too close, particularly to assisting. I know Shaw has gotten a few assists recently, but just in terms of chances per game, it's quite minimal. And I think Fernandes covers United very well. I actually like Livramento a lot, but then I just think why not just go for a Burnley player? I wouldn't really want my Burnley double game week player to be on the bench. I'd probably go with triple Burnley as a minimum. Son and Kane, I agree, are non-negotiables. Even Mahrez, I would say so, just because it seems like he's very likely to avoid rotation. Adams, I think I'm totally fine with, and Barnes, great differential if you're kind of invested into him and you believe in him as an option. He's an interesting one because I think a lot of people are looking at James Ward-Prowse at that sort of price point. But maybe if you're not so confident in Southampton, then that makes sense. I would just say maybe consider as an alternative even to Adams potentially James Ward-Prowse. I don't know how you feel about that though. Big Boy Dama, I wildcarded this week. How would you improve this team? Do not want Burnley players long term. Interesting. Um, so I would say the double keeper setup long term is a little scary. I wouldn't necessarily want to go. I wouldn't necessarily want to too many Newcastle players. I know they've got the doubles, but with Trippier out, I think that's going to be a big kind of dampener on that team. I'd like to give Newcastle a bit of an eye test before I go triple Newcastle, if you sort of get what I'm saying. Because I think a trap that we do fall into sometimes is picking play. I mean, with Arsenal, for example, the double game week looks exceptional, and ultimately we got 0 clean sheets from them. And I just don't want you to be stuck in a situation where maybe at best you'd like to have one Newcastle defender, not necessarily 3 Newcastle players altogether, with 2 defenders within the keeper and the defender. And I would say after the doubles, you are probably going to be stuck in a keeper situation where both keepers aren't excelling as options on a weekly basis. So I'd say maybe put a little bit of consideration towards that. I do like the Adams and Broya double up that people have shown, but I would also point out that James Ward-Prowse I think makes a lot of sense as a midfield option. I think Ramsey's lovely because once again you're making the full use of your budget. You have gone for a triple premium structure, which I don't think is majorly a problem, but that does kind of cap your midfield. So you already have 2, I would say, cheaper midfielders in Fraser and Ramsey, a little bit harder to rotate away from them. So maybe pay consideration to upgrading one of them, or have a little think about the triple premium structure, because I think long term that's going to be quite hard to work with in terms of stretching. You'll always have to kind of go for a -4 to get out of one of these options, especially when we see Spurs play versus some of the weaker teams who don't play so aggressively like Leeds. Like, for example, Kane and Son make a lot of sense this week on a free hit because you don't really have to kind of live with Kane for a long term. But when we have Spurs and they play some easier matchups as the weeks go by, you'll probably be looking at Kane as someone who is hemorrhaging quite a lot of cash in your team. But up to you, though. I think it's really well built for the next few game weeks. And if you think you've got your transfer sort of set out towards post 30, then I'm happy with you sort of living within this structure. Fraser's definitely an option I would think about. I'd maybe just rotate one of the defenders from Newcastle. But yeah. Summer, any changes? I mean, probably not actually. Interesting that you got Dewsbury Hall. So he was obviously an option that I think a lot of people kind of mentioned as a little bit of a gem a few weeks ago at his price point. But then we've also had a lot of 4-point X options prop up. Um, so we're downgrading Bruno Sancho and Sterling to KB. Hmm. Yeah, I prefer KDB. But then also dropping Bruno's tough. Yeah, can I check your Twitter DM? Oh, your stream cut off for the last few minutes. Yeah, I did actually respond to you, so I'll have a look again. Thank you so much for the donation as well. Really, really appreciate it. So yeah, I think I was saying that the options that you've shown as transfers make a lot of sense in terms of the ingoing players within Sun and Broja. But I was suggesting that maybe you drop Watkins because yes, Watkins has a double, but I think I'm quite concerned with Watkins and his playing time right now, and also Aston Villa's inability, I would say, to use their strikers. And then Dennis also has a double, so I would say maybe pay a little bit of consideration towards that. And the reason why I say that is because when you make the Sun and Broja transfers and you take out Dennis, I can see that you're kind of strapped in terms of your budget quite a bit. So I think maybe going away from Watkins, even though it seems like a bad move given the doubles next week, could actually help you out just so you can maybe have a little bit of a think about let's say if Smith Rowe isn't an option, just to have the flexibility to move around these sort of price points. And also ultimately with the midfielders, you could cover Aston Villa by having someone like Ramsey, who I think covers Watkins really well next week when you actually think about your transfers again. I wouldn't really probably go into that game week with triple Aston Villa. Up to you though. If you have a plan for some players to bring in within the next 2 weeks that actually fit this budget, and you don't need that flexibility, then I can understand. I would just say with Dennis having a double in the future too, I might not transfer away from him. But that's just me personally. And also I did say that I hope you're doing well, and thank you very much for the kind words, and also congrats on your awesome rank right now. You're planning to wildcard in 28-29. Hmm. In this case, wouldn't you be more? I would actually then definitely say don't go for Watkins because I mean Watkins was just playing. That's a good point. I mean I think your team is so close to not needing a free hit if you just make the transfers that you suggested. Hmm. But then you do have two free hits, and then also I've just noticed that you do have four Liverpool Arsenal. Yeah, actually, I would go for a free hit. I'd definitely go for a free hit then. I think Dennis's. I wouldn't say Dennis's fixtures are great just because Watford are very poor, but I would say him being nailed and him also being the focal point of the offense is quite a big contributor to why I think he's better than Watkins. But you said you're going for a wild card, so you can definitely think about moving away from Watkins anyways. I would free hit this week if you're going for a wild card because I think free hitting into a wild card is basically a perfect solution. Hey Ben, I'm doing good, thank you. How are you? Um, Andrew, I think you want to be using your bench boost towards the latter stages of the season. There'll be two big doubles around those last few game weeks. So if you can kind of posture yourself to have the bench boost, then that would make sense. Captain Nick Pope, probably not. I wouldn't be so confident about Burnley getting another set of two doubles when it comes to clean sheets. So that's going to be a bit of a worry. I would probably avoid that. I'd definitely free hit though. And I think you can definitely capitalize and move into the top 4 or even 3K with the free hit. You're in a very elite position where with all the chips left that are I think strong. because the bench boost is for me very very high variance regardless. If let's say you postured your team with a bench boost of Arsenal last week, um, that could have been terrible. But the yeah, I mean most of the time you're just playing on probability because you have just an amount of players. But the rest of your kind of chips don't hurt your team at all and actually just supplement your team. Bench boost is always something that I think is a little bit of a trap for some players. So yeah, that's awesome. Probably that. So 1.1 in the bank. How is this free hit team? So this free hit team, I like the differential in terms of bone, but I would still say I think there are better differentials this week, just because I think Southampton have better games. I'd prefer James Ward-Prowse. Even Elanga, just for budget reasons, and actually playing him, and maybe improving bench. I'd trust in Mahrez, honestly. I think given that he actually came off the bench last game, I think that's a big plus for him. Omar. Um, so the difference here is you got Sancho Fernandez and you're competing versus De Bruyne. And I guess Foden could be rotated. And who comes on for him? So you got Dallo. Interesting. And Walker Peters would be the difference. I think free hit one is a little bit less prone to rotation, so that's probably going to be my decision. I'd free hit on this team. I'd definitely think about a free hit. What are the alternatives though? Actually, yeah, if you go James Ward-Prowse or Weghorst, I think you could avoid the free hit. I'd go KDB, I think, as a bit of a priority transfer. This or Pope, Benarek, Alan instead of Foster, Tarkowski, Elanga. Hmm. I'd prefer Pope because I still don't know what happened to Tarkowski last week when he missed the game. If someone could actually let me know in chat, that'd be quite helpful. Kind of get what you're saying in terms of saying Arsenal stuff. I mean, I think that is a little bit of recency bias. I think if you look over the course of the season, Arsenal's been one of the key defenses from FPL. Salah to Bruno, and I heard his son, Robertson to Tarkowski for -12 with wildcard gaming 28. I think it's probably worth it. Problem is, who do I start from the rest of my team if I go for the hits? Okay. Robertson to Tarkowski. Fair. think you don't drop Gallagher. I feel like the game is still decent, and it's not worth the additional -4. So that's my general opinion um, for that. I like the Tarkowski transfer or a keeper transfer even. But yeah, as I said, I think you actually pick Son as the key option. You already have Weghorst in your team. You maybe put Watkins on your bench because I think he hasn't him coming off the bench is a little worrisome. And maybe if Watkins is the one who makes you decide to go for a -12, then that could be it. But I think when I look at your team, so happy to play most of those defenders. Um, and then you got Tarkowski, so that stretches you to 4. Foden might not play, but I'd still say you put him as a starter. And then the same with Bowen, Gallagher, and Madison. So yeah, I think from that point of view, I would only say that Watkins is the one player I'd like to drop, and you can easily drop him by just going for another midfielder. So I would just stretch your team that sort of direction, and then maybe think about dropping something like maybe Cucurella could make sense, or just because that Brighton performance was a little shocking to me. So um, yeah, Tommy from Mir Tarkowski. I think me is a good option this week if you want to move away from an Arsenal player. But I would say some Arsenal players are probably worth keeping more than others. I think White and Tomiyasu have quite low ceilings, but then I think Tierney in easy games can be a very, very destructive option. I mean, he's done very well in tough games in the past, such as the Chelsea game a year ago. We'll shift funds to get Kyle Walker-Peters / Bednarek if we get early news that Liver doesn't play. Bench order fine for now. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that for the most part. Edouard to Broja, FT, and then King to Weghorst for -4. Is this what you mean? Transfers this week are King to Weghorst and Saka to Son. I know you might not like the second transfer, but I think Son will outscore Saka for the next 2 game weeks. And for no, I completely agree with that. And that's sort of why I didn't bring Saka into my team because I didn't really find a place for him in my team, especially with the future double. I don't even like the ceiling of Arsenal midfielders then. And Martinelli, if he's just a bit of a stretch of your budget, then that's totally fine. I don't take Dennis out. Yeah, I don't think you take Dennis out. Sorry, because he'll kind of pay like that hit doesn't really pay for itself when he has a double in the future. I'll show my team now. So this is my team with the Weghorst captaincy. Pinky Mirror, what was your question? Thinking of using one midfield. Sorry, I haven't actually read YouTube chat for a while. She said thinking of using one midfield from Wolves. Next week is double gaming for Wolves, but no Wolves midfield in your cheat list. I think Podence is interesting. But I would actually watch Pedro Neto this week because he has recovered from his injury, and I'd like to see how he actually performs in this Wolves team in the future. Because he was someone who actually was a shining spark for me, and I think he's done quite well. Nobsio, if you could actually just reping me on Twitter, then I could have a look. Why am I not using free hit? I prefer using the free hit later. I've already used the wild card earlier in the second half of the season. I would probably free hit later in those kind of big doubles around the 30 plus game weeks. Foden getting dropped. I mean nothing from a kind of concrete source, Blair. So nothing that I can really confirm with you right now as being anything close to the truth. I think people just expect that because Pep did mention that Jesus and Grealish are ready to play. Would I go Bowen to yeah, James Ward-Prowse? I think it's a pretty good option. Sancho Mahrez, I'd probably still go for Mahrez. I'll check requests in a little bit. COVID. Was that in response to the Tarkowski question? Dallo or Shaw or Telles? I'd probably go for Shaw. Is it worth to go -4 from Foden to Sterling? Definitely not. Who am I captaining? It's going to be Weghorst from me. Nothing is freezing here, Abdur. I think Salah on bench. I mean, Salah's not playing, so that's why Salah's on bench. I'll check message requests very quickly. This is a good team. I also like the amount of doubles you have in the future. Bowen's probably maybe one that we can consider moving away from our teams if we want to get ahead of the curve. But he's been so good in some single game weeks that he's kind of like Cancelo right now, where I feel like not going for him makes sense. Yeah. Sorry, not going out of him makes sense. Tarkowski got COVID last week, but then recovered for the Spurs match. Right, fair enough. Thank you so much. Then yeah, I think but I would still say that if you look at the stats, Tarkowski actually is still he still ranks under Ben Mee when it comes to aerial threat and expected goals. Bruno or KDB, I'd probably say KDB. It is a free hit. Yeah, I know this is a free hit. I wouldn't change much about this team. That's kind of what I respond. I mean, if anything, it might be just dropping Sterling because I don't know whether he actually plays for sure. But the question is, I would say, I mean, who do you drop him to? Arguably, you could go Fernandes and then another option, but that probably means that you're going out of City. So it's a little bit of a tough one there, I think, just due to the kind of price points. Maybe you could go for James Ward-Prowse and Fernandes. That's an option too. And then maybe you can actually upgrade. Hmm. Maybe I'd say downgrade one of the defenders as well because you don't necessarily need to have a five back of defense if and because I'm not exactly sure what the full budget of your team is right now. But I'd say maybe Sterling is slightly under threat of rotation, and I would generically say that Fernandes excites me a little bit more as an option. Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying with Tarkovsky and me. I would just only say that I don't think they're as menacing a presence as other people have mentioned. I mean, Weghorst is certainly a man mountain, so that will be interesting. But yeah, I get what you're saying. That should be very interesting. I'll definitely watch Ericsson play because I haven't seen him from a long time. Completely understand with losing touch. I mean, I think it was a very, very tough game week for a lot of people, unless they managed to get. So last week, I think maybe I got carried away with how good some of the games looked on paper for the defenses, even some of the keepers. But it was actually a very high ceiling game week for the midfielders and forwards. And unfortunately, I made the wrong decision there, went more towards the defenders in my hits. This week, I've had a little bit of a reflective thought about that, gone a bit more aggressively by just going for more midfielders and forwards. And probably that's also a lesson for the future for myself and some other managers in terms of there's definitely less variance I mean there's more variance with midfielders and forwards, but those are the ones that you positively benefit from the most in weeks where you're actually thinking about taking hits, as opposed to thinking about, let's say, going for Ramsdale and Tierney, who probably will actually serve better for the long term. But that's also why I plan on keeping those players in my team. Travis came to final decision, took the -8, Journey to Roberts, Bowen to James Ward-Prowse, and King to Weghorst. That's awesome. I mean, I've taken him out -8 myself, so well done. Start Livermento or Shaw, probably Shaw. Yeah, I'd say Shaw just because there's a shout that Livermento could work. Um, Also asking for a friend, what's your advice? Would I free hit this team? Yes, I would free hit this team. As far as your friend, um, would I free hit? Probably not a free hit for your friend. I think all he has to do is move out of white, um, and I think he's in a good position. He also moves out of king. I don't know how much money he has in the bank, but I think if he can get a replacement for king and white, then I think he's pretty much done in terms of his game week planning. Confused between Sun and Weghorst for captaincy too. Llorente plus Cook being back plus Bentancur being out confuses me. I'd probably say Weghorst. I would just say the one thing is just watching Spurs versus Leeds. They were quite poor in that match in a game where I expected it once again to be the classic game where Leeds sort of play their open style and Spurs conquer the spaces. And Spurs were very able to do that versus City. So that wasn't necessarily anything that I think Bentancur really was sort of paramount towards. So I think him being a miss isn't that effective. I like Kulusevski as an option to kind of stretch the field a little bit more than Mora, who I think is a little bit better when he gets to operate within the central spaces. So yeah, I still think Weghorst though, just because of the double, and I think people are suggesting that he can only really score when it comes to scoring kind of janky set pieces and things like that. But I think he's much better than some of us give him credit for. We had to wildcard this game week, keeping in mind next 2 game weeks. Yeah, I see what you mean. Obviously, I hope that say maximum comes back in time quickly, because otherwise the team is going to your team's going to be in a little bit of a weird position. Maybe I'd even consider going for Elanga if you can kind of stretch your money towards that. But yeah, that makes sense, and I do like. I think capping your team with 2 players from a not elite team makes a lot of sense. So kind of what I suggested to the other person who had triple Newcastle is probably just trim it down to 2, and that's kind of what you've done there. So that's nice. Texia, which free hit do I prefer? So Mahrez and Sterling still the same. You've got Elanga versus Dewsbury Hall, but those are probably bench options, no? And then you've got me and Tarkovsky versus Tarkovsky and Pope. Hmm. I do actually like Team 2, I think, a little bit more. I don't think, but I'm sure which one would be better. I'm leaning towards risky and just going for my opinion option earlier. So Ward-Prowse still a key feature there. Mahrez has been included, so you can kind of stretch the budget a bit more. But you already had Son and Kane in your first draft. It was just a bit of a weaker bench. So when it really comes down to it, I guess it's whether we want to stretch the 3-Man City. I just think, yeah, I'm a little bit worried. I think this Everton team are quite capable of scoring. Yeah, I stick with the first draft. Pope, me, Cancelo, Klein, interesting option. I don't know if he's even necessary. Cancelo, me, very nice options. Fernandes, Elanga, Sterling, Mahrez, Son, Broya, Weghorst, King. A lot of people seem to be very high on James Ward-Prowse, and fair enough. I think he's actually quite a good swap for Bowen if you're not a big fan of keeping Bowen for a while. This is my wildcard team for probably next 4 game weeks at least. Any expert suggestion? Um, ooh, Dendoncker. Okay, is Dendoncker? I mean, I know Dendoncker has been mentioned as someone who's the kind of last man running from the midfield, but he does play quite deep at times, so I would be a little worried about Dendoncker. As kind of your favorite pick for Wolves, I'd probably still maybe go for Jimenez, I think, over Adams. But up to you there. Otherwise, I think wildcard wise, a lot of people actually gone for wildcards, which is really interesting this week. Kind of like to see that. And Sancho's going to be a huge differential, so best of luck with that. I do like the team though, so I'm just thinking we can just go for Pope this week and then just move him out. I guess my one question would be, what would be your transfers next week? Because if you can, let's say, move from Pope, who's got a double game week, and then move into Saw. I know it didn't look very interesting when people went into Saw and Ramsdale this week, but I'm a little bit tempted by triple Burnley. Up to you though. Up to you. Is King playing? I think he's injured, so I'm not really sure about that. 5 minutes left. Yeah, absolutely, guys. Please do lock your teams. Best of luck. Hit -8 from me. Yep, that's correct. I'll just show my team and probably close up with some of the queries and maybe actually look at some message requests. Um, Well, nice photo. Hi, Fran. My team is a complete mess, and you've been consistently getting red arrows. What do you think are the best options this week? I was thinking to move Trossard and King to Bruyne and El Yunusi. I think El Yunusi is a rotation threat, so I would say try not to gamble too hard into El Yunusi. I think James Ward-Prowse is still the better option. I know you might not have the money for it, but I think moving out of Jota is the most sensible kind of move that you have there. Is there any reason why you're keeping Jota in your team? There's a couple issues with the team I'd say is Cornet, I think, is rotation prone just due to injury, and then King as well, suffering from injury, so he's clearly a move away this week. So I think if you can find a way towards Weghorst and maybe something like James Ward-Prowse, that could make sense. Enoch, nice. Wolves defense, Bernardo. So you might be one of the first people I've seen who still has Bernardo on their team. So everything is locked in, isn't it, guys? Best of luck. So you're going for Madison, Bowen, Ramsey. I mean, that defense is almost like the optimum defense I was looking at a few weeks ago. But it's a little late. I think the deadline's over, my friend. I'm so sorry. That's depressing. So a lot of people actually gone for Adams as a differential, and I guess it makes sense because if you think Mahrez can play, then he covers City quite well. Having a City defender on a free hit as their first bench is quite nice. You did a -12 to DCL to Jimenez. Oops, sorry, I didn't actually see that. Which free hit team do you think is the best for the game week? So in the first one, you would have gone for a 4-4-3-3. I did lock in. I think I locked in quite early, so good luck to all you guys. I hope the arrows will definitely be green. But yeah, bit of a tough week though this week, wasn't it, guys? Because I think the major thing here is that if you look at everyone's free hits, the only real changes are what City players they've gone for, or whether or not they've actually gone for Broja or James Ward-Prowse. Some people have gone for the triple Southampton. I'm kind of worried about bringing that sort of third Southampton defender as a starter because I really would have preferred Cancelo and then maybe one Burnley defender, potentially even a third City player through the defense, or just going for double Burnley, which some people have done. But I kind of understand if you've gone for Pope as your keeper, then going for that Southampton defender does make sense. I don't think it's a huge deal. I just think that if you do have that Southampton defender, then I would have probably preferred capping my team off at two. Um, just because I think with teams that are within the sort of mid-table and that sort of area, I wouldn't be super comfortable tripling up on them in a single game week. Over a course of a double, I think it does make sense. We just saw that last week with Burnley, who actually surprised playing versus Spurs and then also getting that beautiful win. So that's the interesting thing I think with the weeks ahead, how well invested people are into doubles within the mid-table teams, because with exception to Liverpool having a double versus Arsenal, I can't see. I think a lot of we'll see a lot of variance within the next few weeks. Some people who have wildcarded have already preempted going to Newcastle players, which I think is interesting because right now everyone's priorities and their wildcards within the previous week, such as Focal's wildcard and things like that, are based around largely Wolves players and then also capitalizing on Burnley this week. So I would say the people who have wildcarded within this week and also might be wildcarding within the subsequent week have got themselves in a good position where they could maybe do very, very well with two Newcastle players, which is a substantial change. We'll see what happens there. Ford Pross a guaranteed hole against this Norwich side who are terrible at defending set pieces. I agree. I mean, this Norwich side have actually conceded the most penalties in the Premier League. I believe they lead the league with 8 penalties conceded, and then the subsequent sort of holders of this, title that you don't really want to hold is another team with 6 penalties. So, but there has been a drastic, I would say, change in performance since Dean Smith has come along. Um, versus Liverpool, I thought they looked very exciting and tight in the first half, and then suddenly Liverpool bring in these sort of these rotation pieces, these options such as Thiago from the bench, even Keita from the bench, and the game suddenly becomes wide open because it's almost like these Norwich players have been worked to death in the first half, and then the Liverpool players really found their way through Norwich in open play in the second half. I wouldn't say they looked necessarily super poor in set pieces, but I hope for people who have gone for James Ward-Prowse that it does work out very well. The app crashed and you can activate your free hit? No way. Your captain is on Bowen and you only had 10 players playing? Oh man. Are you using the phone app? Do I reckon that Real Madrid can win the Champions League this year? As a Real Madrid fan, I will probably say no. With a little bit of wishful thinking, I think we can win, but I think will they actually win? That's a separate question, I would say. Um, I wouldn't say we're anywhere near the favorites. My big worry with the team is I think we're gonna run ourselves into the ground with the rotation that we have, and I'm still not seeing any sort of integration of the younger talent within the team, even though some people have looked good. If you remember the sort of Champions League run where Zidane was effectively using Morata, James, and Isco as the sort of key players within the second unit and dominating the league with these players, I would say we have arguably a much weaker version of that in players like Ceballos and a few other players, but they need more time and more minutes, and that's not what we've seen so far. So I'm worried about that. And even if we advance versus PSG, I think we're going to have a much tougher time versus teams that press. It's very clear and very evident when you watch Modric and Kroos play, and even Casemiro, who's not very technically gifted, that when you actually press them on the front foot, that they're very incapable of actually playing vertically versus some of these top teams, especially these Premier League teams who have very robust, almost engine-like sides, and that's the main kind of concern I'd say as a Real Madrid fan. Sorry about that. You're running back home since you've been out all day, gone in at 6:26 as you're drafting a free hit and about to press confirm the app crash. Bowen is captain. Look, honestly, didn't Bowen score the last time he was playing versus Wolves? Or am I wrong? I believe I'm wrong. Oh, right. Jimenez scored in that game. Yeah, I remember that game now. That was a rough game. I think with all your young talent like Vinny and Rodrigo, they can become real contenders a couple seasons. Yeah, I mean, I think Vinicius Jr. Is very far ahead of Rodrigo. I would agree exactly with what Wood said. I think the consolation is that you got two free hits, and after this week, which you might have to expect a red, unfortunately, you've put yourself in a perfect position to almost make up for whatever you've lost this week in a game week where people won't be free hitting. So that might be your kind of X factor, I would say, where you could even have higher variance. If let's say maybe a postponement goes through or something really bad happens to a specific team or a specific player that we all own, then you might be better placed to free hit in the future. But yeah, good luck to everyone in this game week, and I'm probably gonna hop off soon just to actually get a little bit of an earlier dinner. I think you'll probably drop into I don't really know. So you didn't get to transfer anyone at all, or how did it work? You still final in Paris. PSG will be in the final, but someone like Man United will win. It is what it is. I have a hard time believing Man United will win. I think Atletico Madrid might even or should really knock out Man United. That's not just because I'm biased as a Spaniard, but I really think Man United are quite a poor team. And I mean, the consistency of teams that are very top heavy in the last few years is not very surprised. I still think Liverpool and City, those sorts of teams are going to find themselves within the final. Who do I reckon is the ideal Benzema replacement? I mean, are we talking about someone who has the same sort of skill set as Benzema, or do you think if I just had to take Benzema out of the team, who I would prefer? Because I would say if we were saying the ideal Benzema replacement, it's technically Harry Kane, but I think he's pretty much unaffordable for Real Madrid, and he's got no real interest in going to La Liga. As far as um, maybe a younger talent, someone younger than Kane, who has that sort of dynamic movement and also the ability to drop deep and create. I don't really think there are many players in the world that I know who are of that level. So I would say you have to kind of opt towards forwards who play completely differently. And I think for that reason, Haaland makes the most sense because you can play towards his attributes as opposed to he provides the same sort of team structure and dynamic and cohesiveness as Benzema. Yeah, I don't think United are winning, unfortunately. Um, sorry about that. Just Broya in. I mean, Broya is a great option. Hopefully, Broya bangs for us this week because I need it. Your team's Nuri, Cucurella, and Cancelo. Not the worst defense. Midfield, Bone, Coutinho, and Smith Rowe blank, and forward is honestly, I think because you've got Weghorst, that's going to be a little bit tricky because some people will be captaining, but I hope his effective ownership is less than 100. So you kind of have yourself covered there, and hopefully Watkins will play for you. But we'll see what happens there. Liverpool's here again, quadruple still on. Very, very potentially the case. I still think this is City's league title to win. Um, yeah, we'll see what happens though. For me, I think the biggest key difference I think in that first Liverpool versus City match was actually, Milner having to play right back. I think people kind of forget about how lopsided that made the match. And then Salah really, I don't know, I mean, just pulled out some magic straight out of his what. So we'll see what happens. Only matter of time before age comes up with Benzema. I agree. I mean, they need to think about a plan to replace Benzema, but I wouldn't say it's an immediate threat as compared to, thinking they definitely need a backup plan towards this sort of Casemiro, Kroos, Modric dynamic because it's very evident that it does extremely well in a league like La Liga. But I think when we've seen Real Madrid versus some of the top teams in recent years, we've been completely outpressed. And the City game is the City sort of leg or two legs were the best example of showcasing how I would say out of place this Madrid team could be when playing an elite team that can press that effectively. Yeah, I mean, Haaland would be a. Oh, Focal, how are you? I'm definitely going to the next FPL meetup. We can definitely catch up a little bit earlier in the day and probably start getting wasted earlier. But we'll see. How was your live stream? What did you go for today in terms of transfers and things like that? And when is the next FPL meetup? Because I'm not actually sure. I think it could be Fantasy Fest, right? My first ever Liverpool game was the Leeds game. It's got me believing. Nice. I mean, yeah, I think anytime your own team wins 6-0, you could definitely believe anything. Last six transfers, including hits in the past few weeks, have held double digits, officially peaked. That's awesome. My hits last week were pretty bad. Pretty bad. You rolled the transfer, okay? Oh yeah, that makes sense because you obviously wildcard and you have the Burnley players in place. That's awesome. How did the stream react to the bench points? Unfortunate, by the way, but yeah, saw that on Twitter and felt pretty bad for you. But you still had a decent bench boost this season, I would say, at the very least. And I don't think many people really expected for Arsenal to drop both clean sheets. I know I didn't because I took a -8 for Tierney and Ramsdale, and they both didn't super well. Yeah, I ended up at the chicken shop after that round of shots because I was really craving some food. Where'd you guys get up to? Or what did you guys get up to after that? After those round of shots? Thoughts on Lost Ark? I haven't played it. No, I played I play mostly Valorant right now. Um, Burnley kept him awake. I mean, the Burnley ownership wasn't really what hurt me. I think it was Son, Kane, and Saka doing extremely well in their first leg that really destroyed my game week last week. And then the Wolves versus Arsenal game that was a little disappointing. I'm only Diamond 1 in Valorant right now. You ended up in a 150 Uber with FPL mate. Does he live close to you? I don't actually know where Dan lives. Standard behavior. I haven't been playing too much of Valorant lately, just because work has kind of come in the way, and that's kind of why I've also been a little bit inactive with the stream and some videos too. Oh, okay, fair. That must have been. I mean, I guess with the rail prices nowadays, it's not too bad. We should definitely get into like a Discord one time and just and go for some sort of stream. Edward was so bait. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I fell hook, line, and sinker for Edward. He was fresh bait waiting for me as a replacement from King, and somehow he was actually worse than King in a double game week. Have I played any other FPS games like CS:GO before Valo? No, I haven't actually. I used to play an FPS game when I was a kid in high school, but I hadn't played an FPS in around 10, 12 years before I started playing Valorant, so a little bit out of touch there. I mostly played League of Legends and StarCraft 2. 10% increase in TFL. You got Elden Ring downloaded. Yeah, I saw that on this the Steam store. Will let me know how that goes. StarCraft 2 is goated. Absolutely my favorite game by far. It was actually the game that was probably the best at in terms of my own performance, like perspective to like a player population. Because even in League, I think the highest percentile I ever was 0.x%, whereas in StarCraft I was actually a GM. So yeah, I've become quite a boomer since then. I'd love to play a bit more Valorant, maybe when I leave my job, but we'll see what happens with that. I think the plan at the end of the year is to leave and try and figure some things out in terms of where I want to take my life. I wonder what the White Horse ownership is. Has that already come out? Not yet, no. Madrid hard carrying the Spanish reputation in Europe. Everyone fell off. Um, that's true. I still don't think they've put in very good performances in the Champions League though, so that's been a bit of a worrying thing. But I only played Wings of Liberty, so I stopped playing the game because the kind of player base was very small after Wings of Liberty. So I didn't play Legends of the Storm or what was it? Heroes. Sorry, what am I even talking about? Is it Legend of the Storm? I can't even remember what the expansions were called. That's like how forgettable they were. I remember watching at the time, Jadon play in the subsequent expansions, but no, I think StarCraft 2 fell off a cliff viewership wise and just in terms of this sponsorship and overall revenue. And at the time I was playing on the Korean server. I wasn't a GM on Korea, but I was a GM on NA, and then I couldn't play in EU because I was based in Southeast Asia, so I was only a Masters player in Korea. But it was really fun playing at the time, and I even met a friend who was actually, like a B/C teamer on one of the team houses, and he was working so hard. It was incredible to kind of see like how extensive the, I guess, gaming culture was, and how serious it was at the time. If Leicester go all the way, when are they doubling then? Yeah, that's the weird thing about the cup fixtures. Leicester might have these sort of back-to-back doubles like Burnley in the near future. What was the actual reason behind the Madison benching midweek? But was it just a fitness issue, guys, or was it something larger than that? It's also weird because I think the Vardy hasn't also recovered on schedule. Yeah, well, thanks for that. Yeah, he scored a double in the European fixture. But I would imagine that he's also a priority to actually play in the Premier League. But I kind of hear what you're saying. I guess he was tired. He collapsed on the pitch without any contact. Wow. Okay, I didn't actually know about that. Sorry to hear that. Hope he's doing fine. What do you guys have planned tonight in terms of watching the games and things like that? Because I can tell you now that I'm probably not going to be watching much of the Southampton Norwich match. I think I might have to bounce for a bit and get dinner. But I'm hoping Broja scores for the sake of my hit. And I'm hoping kind of James Ward-Prowse will keep it quiet, and maybe someone like Pookie will kind of put a little bit of a dampener in people who've gone for the defense. But I know a lot of you guys have gone for a free hit with a Southampton defender, so I won't say too much. Show my team. I can't really show my team now. It's just updating. I can tell you what my team is though. So my team is Broja, Weg, Horse Captain, and then Dennis, and because I've not gone for a free hit. And then the rest of the team is Bowen, Cancelo, Laporte, Cody, Son, Coutinho, and one other player that I'm not remembering right now. And Bowen, I think, if I haven't mentioned Bowen already. You're praying for a James Ward-Prowse screamer. I mean, he might score a screamer from the penalty spot. You never know. Well, all right, guys. So I've actually got to bounce for dinner now. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead. Hope that the Southampton game kind of gives you the results that you want, and overall that the game week is very well. There's some green arrows to kind of come through, regardless of whether you're free hitting or not. Keep in mind, of course, strategy-wise, you have a lot of doubles in the future if you're someone who's missed out on a free hit. And I would say don't look at individual weeks as make or breaks, because you're competing with a lot of people who are playing their chips this week. So if you do get a red arrow and you are not free hitting, then I would say it's not the worst of situations. And even if you're free hitting this week and it doesn't go exceptionally well, keep in mind that you still might have additional chips to play. And even with a navigation of a few transfers, maybe going aggressively or even playing against the mold and actually just trusting your gut in terms of a few players that people haven't been looking at. As we mentioned, a lot of people haven't really necessarily gone with Newcastle players yet, but those could be options too if you can kind of find a hidden gem there. If you've gone for someone like Willock as an example, we'll see what happens there. But hope you guys have a wonderful time, and I'll see you guys soon. And definitely I'll keep you guys updated in terms of the cheat sheet too. So see you guys very shortly.